So I'm back to it now, trying to get these dotted brev and longa level evaluations out of the way, and had a great lunch. And I think I'm going to be able to do it. It's I've got the time, so let's finish this. To quote Samwise Gamgee. So I really like Justin's score. This is such fun orchestration, and what I really love about it is the sense of individualized moments, right? They're just all over this arrangement. There are really well crafted, smaller, more intimate moments interspersed with, large to medium large passages, phrases interpreted, but they're always done to the greatest strength of character, of timbre. So I would say, this is another standout arrangement worth studying. And so it's my great happiness to look it over with you, almost more, once again, like an orchestration lesson as opposed to just strictly an evaluation of good and bad, or desirable and less desirable approaches. There may be a few balance issues, a few little bits of perspective that I'll add along the way. So let's jump into it. And I really like how, how discreet this is. I mean, yes, it's forte, but it is sort of saving things up, right? So just contrabassoon and tuba, really simple. Bonk, 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 and then just a little bit of push here. Bass drum, timpani, and bass trombone, plus the lower strings. And it's like nothing fancy, and yet it's so effective in its simplicity. And that means that if all we've got for accompaniment is just contra bassoon and tuba chugging along here, then the bassoon stands out really beautifully. This should be marked solo, by the way. So, bup, 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 bum. And then the reaction is also, somewhat discrete. Just, tuba and contrabassoon plus bass clarinet. So, yeah, just the reaction is really effective for being simple. Bum, 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 bum. And then everybody kind of comes in together, da, 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 da. And what I really love is the drop off, and then just a single bassoon there. Now, interestingly, Justin, you didn't elect to continue on with that sustained note in the winds. You basically just dovetailed that right into the violas, and that works really well, because the pizzicato around the violas is a nice balance there. The discreter sound of the viola doesn't get in the way of anything else, but it's a good match for the for pizzicato itself. Now, what's interesting here is that there is a big shelf here, like everybody dropping down to pizzicato, but because it's understood that the texture is going to be so different that it's worth just asking the listener to listen a little harder. I think there should be a little bit more guidance. Like, we have this crescendo here. I think we need to know where we are a little bit more. Like when especially once you get to here, right? If this is mezzo forte, you should mark it, because that won't be completely obvious. Now, moving on, we have got French horn, you've got 1 and 2, and you mainly stick to good scoring principles for that. But there's there are 1 or 2 places which I'll point out later. And so we've got clarinet and French horn both playing concert E, up an octave from the opening bassoon statement. And yeah, A2 clarinets plus French horn. And I think that this makes a really excellent balance. Once again, very nicely balanced both parts. Notice we didn't need to mark one up and one down because of the doubling of the clarinet and the strength of the register. It's interesting. middle of the staff French horn plus throat tones for the clarinet makes a really just a really fascinating balance. Dun 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 dun, and then the reaction pizzicato strings and bassoons here. Now, see here, I feel if this is mezzo forte, and you have been implying a slow increase of energy here as well in pizzicato strings, I think this should be marked mezzo forte, and that should be momentarily mezzo forte, and then you can drop back down to piano here. Okay? But yeah, and once again, this is probably going to be a bit shorter of an overall evaluation, just because I'm pointing out things that work, but I'm not really picking apart, things that I'm not advising you how to make things work in huge, enormous detail just because it works, right? This is pretty much ready to go to the stands. There are 1 or 2 things you would want to tweak, but yeah, just so nicely done. Just really enjoying reading through it. Now we got the dun 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 dun, and we've got oboes and flutes matched together. English horn, an octave below the top note, and that is a really cool sound. And then, of course, we've got the bass clarinet playing below at the playing a second below the English horn, down on E, so E and F sharp. And that is it's just a beautiful little wind idea, and I like the the low instruments. I wanted to say left hand there, but I think that these should be marked staccato, just to because obviously staccato to start off there. So I think to keep this in line with the sort of sense of sprightliness, and also with the more pointy sound of xylophone and marimba, which, by the way, are also going to be an octave apart, since xylophone essentially has sounds ottava. Then going on, da 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 da. This was a really cool little idea to add here. Now this is essentially A3 to begin with, right? So this pitch here in the piccolo matches up here, and then it is an octave higher following that. Now it's really hard to play such high notes piano in the flutes, so you might want to rethink that. What if this were just the same thing twice, right? So if this were an octave lower and this were where it was here, and they're both marked piano crescendo, and then here you were mezzo forte with those really, really high Bs, right? Because to hit this high B here at piano, you barely hear anything, right? It's hard for the player. It's hard on the player. So so you're adding this in here, arco strokes. It's good that you've got the accent doubling in the low brass, and here you need to have that same force, right? This has got to match, or else the woodwinds just basically go out the window. And yeah, so piano crescendo accents, right? So it's all got to sort of be marked exactly the same way, I think, for that to be effective, even at piano. Keeping in mind here that we've got da 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 da. Notice how Justin solves the problem of some notes being seconds and some being unisons by just having the third trumpet play the lower note on the seconds. That's still going to work pretty well. But we need to know whether this is A2, right? So is this going to be, and in that case, I would say use Craig's approach of writing a unison, right? So just writing two E flats on the same stem, right? Which in Sibelius is just selecting the note and typing the number 1, and then you get the same note. And I really like the way that, da 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 dum. This just gives right away into this is a really successful strategy to jump between sections on this. Okay, and here is our stompy part right here. I like the chimes just blasting away on this. Chong, 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 chong. It's nice, and we're hearing that melody very clearly. You've got to tell us A1 or do a unison on that note or do something else, all right? So A1. You got to tell us A2 or a unison or some other strategy when we get to those single notes, all right? So here is where I would say this is too much weight of the same in the same register on the same notes, right? So because like here you've got octave, this is the lowest octave, and then the next, which is doubled by trombones, and then you've got French horns an octave higher. Don't they need a little doubling too? Drop the clarinets, and then these two guys together just have have a very, very strong tone. Or you could drop the oboes an octave, and oboes make a really great partner with French horns. They're not going to really come through that well at fortissimo, but yeah, I mean, you could actually drop these. You could have your louder instruments marked forte, and then the winds marked fortissimo, and then you would get a good balance, right? And you wouldn't have to just do the Gustav Holst approach of just stacking everybody on the same exact pitches. Okay. Good little, bringing out this little polyrhythm in here. That works really good with how you've scored it. Okay, just putting a lot of kind of grunty energy there. That works fine. Okay, now. And this, I love the simplicity of this. You've got winds plus flutes on top and a little bit of action down here. Then you have strings, just basically nothing but strings. Then you have the brass insinuating itself, leading to this stompy thing right here that kind of has no strings involved at all. And then, excuse me, and then it's like all strings plus the plus the icing of piccolo on top and flutes doubling the violins. Okay, so that works okay. I mean, you could have more even doubling of winds, but this is just to underline the sound of the first violins on top, right? And then this just becomes really a simple way of approaching this. I mean, yeah, you could have made this into more of a big tutti, but I kind of like the fact that it is restrained, right? And then just a little bit, that when you get to that bling with the bassoons below, I think that's a really great little intimate way of approaching this. Yeah, and then we have our little crawl down, do-do-do-dum, ba-da-dum, and so on. And this is kind of neat. I really love the pizzicato below and the winds sort of wending their way down, and everything being soft too. See, that way, coming at the tail end of this diminuendo, this harp roll comes out. But you should really mark it forte, because it's otherwise just not going to be heard. So yeah, so mark this up, and then it's a good start to this little idea here. And just, boom, boom. Really simple elements used in effective ways. I love that little marimba there over the violins. And, just trading off very simple elements. Contrabassoon, ba, 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 bum. Da, 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 da. With these little guys on top. Bum, da, da, ba, da, ba, da, bum. Yeah, so just, once again, less is more, right? I felt that this was every bit as effective as as other well-crafted interpretations of this with much much bigger scoring, right? Just because the the direct, more intimate timbres of the instruments led one to another, very very simply, right? And this would also be a joy to conduct, I think, just with a conductor really interacting with cueing off different people and tying everybody together very nicely, and just allowing the emotional gestures to be integrated. It just is really nice. And then this is such a great idea too, going back and forth between a broken E fifth and a broken D fifth. Along to like the tuba doing those dives, along with the brass sort of recapping the melody. Bum, 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 bum. And notice it's like it doesn't go dun 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 dun. It's just dun 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 dun. That's a neat little variation on it. And then trumpets coming in and doing their little variation. That was very cool. Now, one last thing is, like, these little broken fifths work really well because of the fact that behind them they're being paced very nicely by these just like these D's here, just kind of like giving them a little bit of a root so that the ear doesn't get caught up in the difference of pitch so much. It's sort of just almost like, I mean, this could have been done with like an E fifth above and a D fifth below, and then trading off between the two. That could have been another way to keep the sense of motion back and forth between the two fifths from being so much of an important element. Which I think it's good to have the variation, but to underplay it, and that worked out really well. And then I love this little trumpet statement leading to the this opening out, and then going into our almost like the looking forwards towards the end. This was very cool here. This rip up here on clarinets and flutes, that works pretty well, and it's really well supported below. These oboes, soft on a C sharp. You might want to just have this C sharp be an octave higher, or just do a unison E here, because you don't really need it. You got the horns here, right? It might be a little tricky to play that high F sharp soft. Like by the time you're sort of thinking, if you're forte here, you're going to be mezzo forte there, you're going to be mezzo piano here. So, or still just piano plus a little, right? So it's going to be hard to state that so softly up there on that high F sharp. So, not a big deal, but still something to think about. So nice scoring here, and it's still delicate, so you can just really hear the push to this, and and this nice little harp glissando here. And this was awesome as well. This is reminiscent of the snare drum, which I also thought was great. I didn't comment on before, but yeah, this that was pretty cool. I mean, I think that you don't need the I don't think you need this little extra beam in there. I think it's enough just to go yakataka 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 yakataka. I think that works fine. I think when you might as well be marking tremolo if you have 3 beams in there, right, at this tempo, then that is essentially a tremolo. But I would say just doing a measured tremolo in 16th notes is effective enough, right? I think that is fine. And this is just going to seem a little silly, like at this tempo, to throw in that beam. So I'd say just take it out and just make these guys 16ths. Or if you really must have tremolo, just mark it as just a 3-beam tremolo on a half note. All right, so moving on. I think that is pretty good scoring in there. Just the way this is all set up, and that will balance. This is neat. Be careful though, like descending into this and then cutting off when you've got this big flare in the brass. This is probably not going to balance very well, right? Then continuing on, this is really getting ready for the final push. I think you need a little bit more bark or a little bit more bite here. Bark and bite. I think you need a little bit more bite here to the pizzicato alongside these descending passages. So look, probably add a little teeny bit of muted trumpet, I think. Or, well, there's no time to put on a mute. I'd say just add a little bit of trumpet in there, and then that would take care of that. Maybe not score all the way up to A and B flat there, but just, even if you just punctuated these two pitches here with trumpets, I think you would get the right amount of punch that's needed to work against the way the music is scored here. Okay, and now we're starting to press on toward the end, right? And I'm not seeing stringendo here, poco stringendo, right? And that just really is such an essential part of the music. But it's still, still works pretty well. I like the way you bring everything down to pianissimo and then just slowly increase. And, you're not overly reliant on percussion at all. You're just, basically letting the instruments be as percussive as they need to be and to dance around as much as they need to be. Now, this is really complicated. See, like this, I would say just don't even bother bringing the oboes until here, right? Because like piano, middle C, that's just really tough on the oboe player, right? It's going to sound more like mezzo forte, or it'll sound mezzo piano, but it's a question. Yes, it's playable, but is it a good way to play? Is that really desirable? I would say no. Just don't bother, right? What you could do is you've already got the C with the English horn, right? So just let go of the C here and just score D, right? Because you've already got you've got your two oboes, right? Which are kind of not really essential because you've already got those pitches under the clarinet. All right, I know you want some more tone weight, so you need more tone weight. Let the English horn play the middle C, and just let the oboist, either have A2 or just have a single oboe player play the D, and then you're safe, right? But I think just asking a C, it just kind of is a nothing. I just don't feel it's just the strongest scoring, right? And since you're doubling those pitches anyways by French horn, right? It's almost wasted, right? All right, and adding more and more stuff going on, more and more excitement. I like the way that it climbs, adds. It's usually playing to its strengths. I like the marimba and the xylophone working together, and the way that they jump an octave right toward the end. This is a really cool rip. Right here, in this 3/8, you might as well just score, instead of dividing up these beams like this, just have it 6, just a solid 2 beams all the way through, 6 pitches, or six notes in a double beam all the way across, rather than just these little bits of beams. That's that's distracting to the player, I think. It's just better to see it just all as one thing. All right. So you've got this rip and then the glissando coming right off of that, and everybody else freaking out. Boom. Yeah, so it's going to work. I like the way that you have just gotten these down to single notes. That's really strong. These strings are going to be heard. And yeah, the winds and brass, the 2T seems to be pretty solid. Okay, nothing too high, nothing too, no register being left out or anything. So yeah, so nice big hit. Then, our little statement here. Great minds seem to be thinking alike here, in just rather than having a solid loud note all the way to the end, to sort of imitate the sound of the piano, kind of holding on to things and dying away. And then the little snap pits at the end with, with the lower winds, lower brass, bass drum, not timpani. Yeah, I think that is a really cool way to end it, right? And of course, these instruments can go down to niente. I would say, don't write a niente for piccolo above the staff, right? It's really better to use its lower register. In fact, some people whose opinions I've read or who I've talked to kind of feel niente isn't really a reasonable dynamic to assign for flute players unless it's like in their first octave. They sort of feel that has the most kind of subtlety, so it's the easiest to go down to nothing, right? But people are getting so used to composers just assigning niente to things that like are not really niente that nobody's going to really question you on this. But one or two people who specialize in being very precise about contemporary scoring might say, look, it's we can sort of imitate that, but it's not going to be as true as something that was scored lower, right? Because let's face it, wind players can take a nice long note and they can round off the release on it so well that it might as well just be niente. And if it might as well just be niente, then why bother to ask for niente, right? Unless you really have a specific reason to go down to almost nothing, like say the way that a clarinet can in its Chalumeau register, what they call subtones, and to hear that just barely on the edge of hearing. Do you know what I mean? That's really what niente is useful for. If you were to just mark this triple P at the end, you get the same exact effect, right? Because they're still going to round off the end of the note, and it might as well be niente. So I would say niente is like $100 bill. It's like there are places that you want to slap that $100 bill, and you don't, and there are places you don't need to. So if you don't need to, then don't, right? And then it will make the appearance of it in your music all the more exceptional and beautiful and worth spending. All right. And with that, I will just say, yeah, this is a shorter evaluation, but you could see that there was not a whole lot I could take issue with or expand on or really give you an enormous amount of counseling about. So just really well done. If there was one overall critique, I would say, and that would be, if this were done in kind of a cinematic style where you needed to kind of inflate the emotion and you needed to exaggerate certain gestures, you're going to need to have more tutis than you scored here. So if you're scoring to a strength of kind of like more intimate scoring being the norm for you right now, and being easier to deal with, then sure, then you need to work on bigger tutti scoring, right? But using this sort of more elegant, more controlled approach, and just kind of saving the tutis for just for the most important gestures, most important endpoints of phrases and so on. That's fine too. So really nice work, Justin. Just really thought that this was a cool entry. And, I think I'm going to make it. I've got one more full-length score and one more shorter score to evaluate, and I still have a couple of hours before I have to change my schedule. So I'm going to keep charging along. And thanks so much for sharing this with us. And here we go. Let's just move on right to the next evaluation.